Welcome to Technado.
Welcome to another episode of Technado. I am 1/3 of your hosting team here, Sophie Goodwin. I wanted to remind you that Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. If you're interested in IT Pro membership, you can use that discount code Technado30 to get a nice little discount on your membership. I am also, like I said, I'm 1/3 of the team here. I'm also joined by Don Pizzette. Don, how are you?
I am doing great. Exciting week ahead of us. We've got some nice little conspiracy theory stuff, which is really my favorite articles. I look for those every week. Hard to find a good conspiracy these days, but yeah, just a lot of neat things going on.
Yeah, what is the world coming to when you can't find a good conspiracy in the news? We're talking about conspiracies and cheese today, so you know it's going to be a good day. And of course, we've also got Daniel Lowry over on the other end of the table. How are you, Daniel?
I'm well. I'm over here thinking about, like, if we were to create our own conspiracies, could we then also categorize ourselves as something like, I know that like QAnon is taken and Blue Anon, but what Anon would we be? Would we be Tech Anon or?
Didn't we have the unofficial conspiracy theory for us for a while that the moon was hollow and George Washington had set up a base there?
I vaguely remember this, yes.
I think maybe we need to double down on that.
Bring that back.
Yeah. It was a good.
I might need a crash course in that because I think I might have missed that one.
Yeah, we have a whole webpage somewhere.
Yeah.
I gotta dig that
It's
up.
on the dark web.
We brought it up on the dark web. Yeah. That was a while
We'll
ago.
put out a poll or something. New name for the podcast. And Anonymado or something. I don't know. Anonymado.
I think you just pick a letter, right? You know, like Ananon or.
There you go. Xenon.
Donanon.
Yeah, just go straight to the end.
Yeah,
Z.
No one.
Yeah.
No one's going past us.
Yeah, that won't be taken. Well, we will get to the George Washington moon conspiracy theory eventually, I would imagine. But for now, we'll go ahead and jump into some of these articles that we've got here today. This first one comes to us from Ars Technica. It says, "Time's up, Microsoft," which is threatening. "Windows feature that resets system clocks based on random data is wreaking havoc." And from what I read here, this is a feature that was actually intended to make sure that the time was correct. It was supposed to be like a fail-safe kind of thing, and it's actually the thing that's causing problems. Is that right?
So, the
thinking
phrase
of the Happy Gilmore. Where were you on that one, dipshit?
the phrase that comes to my mind is the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And
I like mine better.
And that is exactly what's happened here. Microsoft introduced a feature actually several years ago. I think the issue was first reported back in 2019, so this has been around for a little while. They introduced a feature with the best of intentions, right? The thought was, hey, if you've got a computer that's turned off and powered down, when you turn it on, the clock might be wrong. We've all seen that, right?
This happens.
A lot of computers have a little
CMOS battery.
Yeah, what is it? 2032 battery that's on the motherboard, and it uses that to keep its clock accurate.
Some
so
of them are
boots up,
2025s.
Yeah. All right. So there's a clock, and it's important, right? It's especially important in today's security world because things like TLS, IPsec, whatever encryption algorithms you're using, they expect accurate timing to be able to use that as part of the formulas they use to encrypt your data. If your clock is too offset, you might not be able to securely communicate with it or communicate at all with
or log in.
Yeah,
right?
Active Directory is like
Active
a 5
Directory
minute.
Hates that crap when it ain't right, man. And then how do you get in after that, right? You have to go into the BIOS and change the system time so that you can get the thing to think that it's the right time again.
Yeah. So, what is one to do if you think that you might turn a computer on and the clock is wrong and it can't securely communicate? Well, you could reach out to an NTP server and sync up right at boot, but you wouldn't be able to do that securely if your clock was too wrong. So someone at Microsoft, and they haven't named names, but it's probably Bob down in engineering. And Bob had this great idea. And he said, what if we could come up with a secure mechanism to do this? When you connect to a host with TLS, like go to any secure web page, as part of the handshake that happens for TLS, there's a field that's handed off with the Unix time, the standard Unix time that's in there, right? The Unix epoch time is how many seconds it's been since January 1st, 1970.
Yeah.
Because Unix.
Whatever.
And so they hand that off. And so what the engineers thought was Windows could trust that, could reach out to a couple of different servers, measure that Unix time, take the average of it, and use it as the time to be able to boot up, and then reach out securely to a trusted time server and synchronize time accurately. Well, the problem is, back in 2019, actually a little bit before that even, OpenSSL modified that field to not store standard Unix time, but instead to store a completely random integer, just a random number that means absolutely nothing. And the result is that a small portion of Windows servers will randomly set their clock to something insane. Maybe 55 days in the future, maybe 15 days in the past. We're not talking hours. We're talking entire days, months, right?
When did my computer slip off the toilet and hit its head and then create the idea for the flux capacitor?
Yeah, yeah. And the Ars Technica article has like a nightmare scenario in it, right? Imagine you have a database server that's issuing out identifiers, like unique identifiers to resources.
That's not based off of time at all, is it, Don?
Well, you would think, right? And if you jump back in time, you might reissue numbers because you don't show the ones that's already being issued. There's a nightmare. If you jump forward in time, you're skipping a whole big area, so you've got a bunch of unaccounted for identifiers. It's a nightmare. Daniel, you mentioned Active Directory, right? Totally destroys that. If you leap that far ahead,
yeah, get ready for a good time.
And there's a number of other things
in your office while you fix this.
Yeah. So it's bad. And this is one of those features that Microsoft was trying to make something a little more secure, but the end result was they've created a bit of a debacle.
I find it interesting that we don't have a secure time protocol. We have a secure everything else protocol. How is it that can we not set up a secure mechanism for like checking time servers?
So there is. I mean, you can
why do they say that they don't have a secure way to check time?
The problem is if your clock is so far off, you can't establish that secure connection. Your TLS session will fail.
Oh, because the TLS,
Yep.
the stupid. That is dumb.
And so you could fail to not using TLS, but then somebody could intercept that.
The time, yeah.
Yeah, and you know, if you want to do a replay attack, right?
Yeah.
Replay attacks don't work because you can't control the clock on the other system. But if they're doing an unsecure connection to a time server, you could roll them back 3 days and replay network traffic you sniffed 3 days ago. You know, that would be the risk there.
Interesting.
I think maybe they've got some Rocky Horror Picture Show fans at Microsoft. They just want to do the time warp. That's all that is.
Oh, jeez. I hate that movie.
A lot of people do. I don't think you're alone in that.
You know, I find that another interesting thing. Like, I've never thought Rocky Horror Picture Show was like a thing to do that I would want to do.
It puts the cult in cult classic.
Yeah.
For me, we're off the rails now, but for me, it's just musicals in general. I hate it when
Don
people
hates
sing.
me. He's like,
I don't like
the
when there's
Simpsons
joy.
episodes that he hates are the ones where they're musicals.
Yeah.
Springfield.
The only movie with singing that I appreciated was the South Park movie.
Oh,
Okay, that checks. Yeah, that checks out.
yeah, that makes sense. And Weird Al, you like Weird Al?
I do like Weird Al,
Right.
but you know, he's a singer. It's not like he's giving me a movie and he starts singing.
Well, he did.
That's true.
But you expect that because he is a singer. It's not like a movie.
Right. I kind of like go in expecting that.
I don't want to hear Hugh Jackman sing.
What?
Like that.
You don't want Wolverine
My
in a
kids
4-part
love
harmony?
The Greatest Showman, man. They think that's just the greatest film ever.
They think it's the greatest showman.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw us off. It just I was like, oh, that's funny. So one thing that I thought was interesting was that like it's not like this is something that, well, there's this problem and here's this fix and boom, we're done. It's like it doesn't always do this. It's just kind of random. So how do you fix a problem like that?
All right. So what you need to do as an IT worker is evaluate how much you care about this.
I was going to say cry.
You're probably already doing
Lots
that.
of
Like
sobbing.
That box is already checked.
Oh, gotcha.
So basically what you need to do is look at this and say, am I really getting a benefit out of this, right? If you are powering servers off for a long period of time and are likely to have an incorrect clock, then this is a good feature for you. You should probably hang on to it, right? However, because this data doesn't actually work in a lot of scenarios, if you have a lot of Linux servers, it definitely doesn't work. And if you don't power off servers for a long time, then this is not a problem you've got. You would actually be better off disabling this feature. You don't necessarily need it. It is the feature itself is called STS, which I have forgotten what that stands for.
Secure time seating or something like that?
Secure time seating.
Perfect. So that is just a feature inside of Windows that you can disable, and not a bad idea to disable it. But
I see a group policy object coming out.
Yeah. And Daniel, you see this all the time. This is one of those spots where it's not a one-size-fits-all. You've got to evaluate what you think the risk is. Is this security feature worth it? And I compare this to like the Spectre and Meltdown mitigations, where, hey, if I'm AWS and I've got hosts that are hypervisor hosts and I'm worried about that attack, I need those Spectre and Meltdown mitigations. But if I'm on my own laptop, Spectre and Meltdown are literally a non-issue.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give up 20% of my CPU performance. I'm going to
Always-
turn those off.
I always love how on my virtual machines on my laptop, where I was like, "Hey, you've got those Spectre Meltdown mitigations. Probably going to put a hit on that performance.
Yeah.
I want to disable those." I'm like, "Why is it on by default? Can't you tell I'm on like a regular laptop here? I'm not running mission critical stuff."
Yeah, Linux, they made that choice on the desktop distros to disable the mitigations by default. On the server distros, it's on. But you have to make a choice. In IT security, it's not a easy on off. You've got to evaluate your environment.
And we got to get somebody working on a secure time protocol that does not require SSL. We use something else. I don't know what it is, but figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things you can do. Have you ever used those? They're NTP servers, but it's a little box that picks up the atomic clock via radio.
No, I've never used one. I've heard of them.
So I'm sure it's
That's kind of
different.
cool.
It's different in different countries, but in the United States, there's an East Coast and a West Coast
Right.
radio station that is constantly transmitting a reliable time source. It's not truly secure because somebody
it's
could try
over
and
the
override it,
airwaves. Yeah.
but it's considered an out-of-band method to be able to get network time. So then you could have a trusted host that you didn't necessarily require a secure connection to.
Well, plus if you had multiple sources, right, then you could check whether or not there was a difference between the two, and then that would invalidate any kind of replay.
Yeah. And you could always get your security from other protocols. Like you could do a layer 2 VPN between a host and the
Right.
time server.
There
So
you
like
go.
there's other ways to work around it. But again, probably overkill for most people.
You know what they say, the best laid plans of Microsoft men often go astray.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. But moving on from Microsoft, over in I don't know, Linux land? Makes it sound like Disney World.
Linux
Linux
land.
land. Some positive news. This pulling this from Slashdot. Debian turns 30, which coincidentally is also the number of ways you can pronounce that word. So
Yes.
this is exciting, right? This is 30 years of, is it Debian? Is that how you say it?
It's Debian.
Debian. Okay,
Yep.
that is the correct way.
It is, yes.
Okay.
Debian was created by a gentleman named Ian Murdoch.
Yep.
And he had a girlfriend or wife at the time. I don't remember if they were married or not.
Yeah.
But her name was Deborah. And so when they created the distro, they just merged the two names,
Oh.
Deb, Ian, and there it is. I don't know that she ever actually developed on it or not. And they split up not long afterwards. But the name of the distro
It was
stuck.
the distro that broke them. That's
probably true.
30 years later. Here we are celebrating the demise of their relationship.
Ian, he passed away a couple of years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but he passed away. But Debian lives on, and to me, it turned 30 years old. Like that is a badge of honor for a Linux distro to last that long. Many of them come and go. I know, Daniel, you were always a big, was it Mandrake? What was the one that you liked early on?
So it was it Mandrake? It probably was Mandrake at the time. Right. Then that became Mandriva.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. So I used Mandrake for a hot minute, and then I became a Slack user, and it was like all Slack all the time.
Yeah. And, distros come and go, but there's
They do.
only a couple that have been around a long time. You mentioned Slackware.
Yep.
Or you did mean Slackware, right?
I did mean
Okay.
Slackware, yes.
so Slackware has been around probably the longest, I think, of
You
the
think?
distros.
More than Red Hat?
Yeah, Slackware was
Wow.
before
Man,
Red
Slack's
Hat.
been around, huh?
Now I got to find
Now
that
Don's
out. I
gotta
got to pull
know.
up the Linux family tree again. But Slackware has been around a long time. Red Hat's been around a long time. SUSE Linux has been
Yeah.
around a long time. So there's a handful, but they're usually these big corporations that are making money somehow. Not Slackware. It's just one guy.
It's just one
but-
guy.
Debian, I think, is one of the most underrated Linux distros because it's so important, right? If you think about Ubuntu,
No Debian, no Ubuntu, no Ubuntu, no.
we're really gonna.
He's
really
having a
hate-
stroke.
This is the one thing about this. You want to start a religious war in the Linux community, just start saying things differently and watch them go, it's to pronounce
Yeah,
Linux.
I don't say Ubuntu right, but it's supposed to be Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is hard to say.
Which is technically like a Swahili word or something like that.
Something like
right?
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's like an African dialect.
Which means
Community?
friends? Community, is that
I think
it?
it's
Yeah.
like community.
That's why
yeah.
their icon was supposed to be like three people holding
Yeah,
hands.
yeah.
It means humanity.
Humanity.
Man.
There you go.
Well, today we learned. We're learning a
Kumbaya.
lot of things
Yeah,
today.
we really do.
But-
Let's just make the podcast us learning things.
That's what it is for me every week. You guys are late to the party.
Well, what I want to highlight with Debian is that it is the foundational building block of a lot of other distros. Do you like Ubuntu? Well, Canonical builds that from Debian source. Do you like Linux Mint? They build that from Debian source. There are a number of distros that are out there that, like Daniel mentioned, would not exist if it wasn't for the work that Debian does. However, people look at Debian as like a developer's distro. You know, if I'm a developer, that's what I'm going to use. But in production, I'm going to use something else. And the reason they do that is because there's not really a good way to get technical support with Debian, right?
And like the packages that they typically bundle with them tend to lean developer style, right? A lot of IDEs and a lot of built-in languages already there. You don't have to do a lot of installation. All that stuff's kind of baked in, right?
And sometimes they make decisions that are different than the other distros. I remember as System D was catching on, Red Hat jumped on it. All the Red Hat distros switched. Canonical jumped on it before Debian did. That was a weird departure there for a little while, where Debian wasn't quite ready to adopt System D. They have now. So, you know, that puts them in an interesting place. But in my Linux career, I always know if I want like a kind of an unbiased opinion on a technology or whatever, I can look at how Debian is doing it and use that as kind of my frame of reference to measure other distros. So it's phenomenal that they've been around for 30 years, and you know, kudos to that team for keeping it going even after, you know, losing the figurehead. Still keeping things together and doing a great job for 30 years.
It's kind of funny you mentioned you were going to go to the family tree of Linux. Anybody who's ever seen this thing, it is ridiculous, right? And I guarantee there are plenty of these that no longer exist. And for the fact that, like you said, Debian's been around for 30 years, holding strong, that's kind of like a testament to its brand that you should go check it out if you never have before. Maybe give it an install. You might find yourself going, hey, this is my cup of tea right here. I kind of like this. It's not so bad.
Yep. Slackware and Debian both came out in 1993. Red Hat came out in 1994.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
How about that?
Slackware was one of the early ones. And really, I mean, of current distros, I think it's probably the oldest one that's still around.
How about them
I'm
apples?
just checking to see if anybody else is older. It doesn't look like it.
Pop OS. That's
And, you know, Daniel, you got started with Slackware. Oh, no, you didn't.
I didn't get started. So my first Linux distro was Red Hat, and then it was Corel.
Okay.
Yeah, I had Corel Linux, and then I went to Mandrake because I was like, I started getting into, okay, I want to move into this being my daily driver, and Mandrake was kind of like that thing at that point in time. It was the most daily driver, desktop friendly kind of thing going on. I was really wanting to watch my DVDs and that kind of stuff, and that was the best support was on that, and it was like the best, you know, the lowest ticket price to entry to that kind of stuff. And at the time when I was learning, that's where I gravitated toward. And then I kind of moved into more Red Hat because I was getting the server administration. And then from there, you know, I got into becoming like a Windows admin for the most part, and Linux kind of fell by the wayside for a hot minute. But Slack, when I did run it, that's what I would run to, would be Slack.
Well, Slackware was my first distro. That was
really?
what I started with. Slackware, I believe it was 1.0. It was a
Nice.
1.1 or 1.1, 1.0 or 1.1. But that was my first distro. So it holds a special place in my heart. But I wouldn't use it in production today.
Oh, no.
Like, it's not really suitable for that. But that's where I started.
That's crazy talk.
Sophie,
you have a very perplexed look on your face, by the way.
You guys were talking about the guy that made Debian.
Yeah.
And so I looked him up
Ian Murdoch.
because I wanted to know more about him.
Did he murder somebody?
No, well, it's so sad. The way he died.
I don't know it.
I don't know that I should share it, but if you want to know, I guess you can Google it. But he unalived himself.
Oh.
Huh.
It's sad.
That's not
like
cool.
the story is just, and then like there's a whole piece on his death on Wikipedia. I'm sorry, I don't mean to. This is a happy time. This is a happy occasion. Debian turns 30. Woohoo! But I didn't know much about the guy that
Well, I
created
really
it.
believe you.
Very convincing.
So I was like, oh, I want to learn more about this guy, and that was a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
All right.
I didn't mean to
Well, there's
derail.
that.
Continue with your thought. You were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Buzzkill.
It's just, geez. I mean, it's like there's a whole thing about the police, and oh God, it's just
You know, there have been a few incidents. I mean, if you take Linux as a whole, it's an open source project. You have thousands of developers working on it. There's going to be some incidents. Obviously, you know, Ian Murdoch is a huge character, like Linus Torvalds, right?
Yeah.
A huge figure in the Linux world. But there are other ones, like the guy who created Riser FS, where, you know, there was a whole big thing there too. So there's been some controversy and struggle over the years. I can understand him having probably mental health issues, just because it goes back to what I was saying about Debian being so important
Yeah.
and so under-recognized in the industry.
I mean, there's even a list in this article about like all the things that it's found in, from cluster systems to just, regular desktop computers, but it says it's even on spacecraft or in spacecraft. So it's, that's pretty impressive.
Memoriam to Ian Murdoch and the 30-year anniversary of Debian. We should all spin up a VM of Debian, play with it for a week, see if we like it.
We should go a step further and give away free copies of Debian.
Okay, man, you're a crazy man. But if that's what you want to do, I say we do it. Free copies for everyone.
I feel like I'm on Oprah right now.
Yeah.
All right.
You get a Debian.
I feel a little better now. So yeah, Debian turns 30. Debian. Happy birthday.
Don't forget Debian.
Debian. Happy birthday, Debian. We're so happy to celebrate. But we'll go ahead and move on, because if I keep reading from this article, I'm gonna be depressed. So we'll move on. We've got another article here that I mentioned at the begining of the show. We were going to talk about cheese, and I'm ready to deliver on that. This comes to us
Hold on.
MSN.
Cheese. Dog gets that reference.
I wish
There's
I
probably
understood.
a few people out there getting that reference, but
He's Dean now.
that's right.
Oh, how I wish I understood. So microchips were found in the microchips in the Parmigiano and other ways Europeans are fighting fake food. So I read this at first and I was like, immediately conspiracy. And that's not what it sounds like. It's not like they're chipping and they're tracking people eating the cheese. It's to prevent from counterfeits. It's to, make sure that the authentic Parmigiano-Reggiano stands out from I guess the fakers. I didn't realize there was counterfeit cheese. I didn't think that was a market.
Right? Like there's a big black market for Parmesan cheese, apparently.
Yeah.
Look, let's be honest, right? When it comes to high-end aged bottles of wine, aged cheese.
I've heard of wine. I've heard of like wine, because you can buy bottles of wine. They're super expensive, but not cheese. I'm sitting here thinking craft is completely ripping these people off.
I think most people would not be able to tell the difference. And maybe let me scale back that generality just to me.
Yeah.
I certainly couldn't tell the difference between an expensive wine and a cheap wine, expensive cheese or cheap cheese. I'm not sophisticated enough for that. But it's a thing, and counterfeits are out there, and they need a way to track it. And apparently the cheese industry has embraced every bit of technology possible to be able to do this. They're not tracking you, but they are tracking the cheese, which you can eat, and they can still track it. But they're not tracking you. It's okay. So
Hold on, what?
So basically, they've been working with another organization to come up with a microchip, a kind of like an NFC tag, but not NFC, something different. They can be embedded in the cheese. That they are super dodgy on the details on this. Like, what they tell you is, hey, it just goes in the cheese, and it's got an identifier in it that's tied to a blockchain, so you can actually track in this ledger from the milk that was received to making it into cheese, to taking it to the store, to putting it on your plate, all with this chip that's embedded in the cheese. And don't worry, if you eat it, it's okay. It's an ingestible chip that you can eat.
Does it still work?
So this is where things get a little
After
fuzzy.
you emasticate it?
And this is where we have to put our conspiracy theory hats on for this one, because basically they give some mixed signals. I'm trying to find the quote in the article as quick as I can here, because they say, don't worry about it. It actually breaks down in your system and it won't harm you, and we can't track you because it doesn't work remotely.
So,
Yeah, it says they can't be read remotely and can't be read once they're
here's where
ingested.
my head's going with this, right? So I can eat the microchips because they're edible, right? And if some person was like, we got him, he ate the cheese, right? Where is he? Oh, we're following our beacon here. Why are we in a sewer?
Right.
Eventually, I'm assuming that's where the microchip ends up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me poke at this a bit here. They say they can't track you because it doesn't work remote. And what they mean is, like, they can't sit at their headquarters in Italy and see where you are, right? But the chip is in you if you've eaten it, and it absolutely still works. It's just a proximity issue, right? So
Gotcha.
that was
so you got to
all-
be like super close.
Yeah, or probably not even that close, right? Because Amazon was experimenting with their storefront, and Apple was too, where you could just pick up an item off the shelf and walk out the door, and it would
They're doing a
proximity
lot of that in
scan.
California now.
Yeah, without the identifier.
Yeah.
But they tell us, hey, don't worry, it breaks down in your system, whatever, it's safe. But then they go on to say it can withstand extreme heat or cold. It can actually be stored for years in liquid nitrogen. That tells me it's probably not going to break down in your system. And they even say they did an experiment where they stored it in a simulation of stomach acids for 3 weeks. And I know as a kid, I was told not to swallow gum because it takes 7 years to break down.
Right.
Not true. Like nothing stays in your system for more than 24 hours or something, right?
You either absorb it or you pass it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this chip totally goes full circuit through your body. And it's nuts that they're even considering doing stuff like this.
Well, hey, they make you swallow those camera pills now, right? So they can check your
I've heard of
GI
that.
tract. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Oh, yeah. You can get a pill, which is a camera. You boop, down a glass of water. As if you're having any kind of GI issues, they just, when you're, they got to catch it, quote unquote. And then the recording is there and they can see what's going on inside you without invasive surgery.
I don't like this episode.
You ever watch one of those YouTube videos of like a roller coaster and you kind of feel like you're on the roller coaster because it's point of view?
Yeah.
POV, my internal organs.
There you can see we're entering the large intestine.
Yeah. Put your hands in the air.
Here's where the fun comes.
Yeah. So the moral of this story, there is one, is
we're going down Corny Mountain.
You always got to push that.
That's right.
Push that envelope.
Peanut bog. There it is. There it is.
The moral of the story here is
Hello, Sophia is straight up broken.
She's crying, I think. This is an emotional roller coaster, this episode for her.
Really is.
Just because you can do something with technology doesn't mean you should do something with technology. And this is definitely going to get some backlash. Now, fortunately, I am not wealthy enough to buy the type of cheese that they are protecting. I don't know about you guys, so I'm not at risk today. But this technology does have a way of working into other products. And hopefully is not a glimpse of the future to come.
I'm kind of like you. I don't have enough of a sophisticated palate. Maybe they can use the pill to check whether or not I've eaten the right cheese.
Yeah. If I'm going to spend a ton of money on something, it needs to last forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah. It's not a one-and-done experience that I have to just store up in the memory banks.
Yeah. You remember, I know you've seen this, Daniel. Sophie, have you seen the movie American Psycho? Christian Bale?
Not all of it, but I know what you're talking about.
At the beginning when they're at the restaurant.
Oh,
and they get these tiny little dishes, and then they get the bill, and it's like $800 a plate. And like, oh, that's pretty affordable. And those are the kind of people who have to worry about this cheese stuff.
Yes.
Today.
Cork sniffers.
Yeah.
I'm an Olive Garden enjoyer, so that tells you that I probably would not know if I was eating the
you
real
made a powerful
Parmigiano.
enemy with this guy.
Did I?
You're not a fan of Olive Garden.
It's fun.
It's I mean, I can make Chef Boyardee at home. I don't have to get them to make it for me.
It's the salad. I
$15 a
enjoy
plate.
salad dressing. It's quite good. But yeah, that tells you I'm probably not going to be able to tell if the Parmigiano I'm eating is actual Parmigiano-Reggiano. I don't care enough, you know?
Yeah.
And especially if now I know potentially I might consume a microchip if I eat the real thing.
Here's
I'll
what's
just
up,
eat
though.
the fake stuff.
If there is a competitor out there making cheese that the people have to put a damn chip in so that you can tell the difference, just sell it and go, yeah, it's not theirs, but it's damn good.
Yeah, and it's cheaper, and you won't get
It's
chips.
way cheaper, man. I'm gonna buy that all day.
Yeah. If I want chips with my cheese, I'll go buy some Lay's or something. So before I just lose my mind, we'll go ahead and take a quick break. But don't worry, we will be back in just a little bit with some security articles here on Technado. As you can see, it's Black Hat Day 1. There's already a ton of activity going on, and we've already had a super busy week with a bunch of other stuff that's been going on, and we're really only halfway done. It's a little overwhelming. I've already gotten lost a few times, and this is just Day 1. So let's see what's going to happen. So as you can see, this is obviously Sentinel-1's booth. I don't even know that you could call it a booth. It's more like a biome, like a Minecraft biome. It's kind of giving me Stranger Things vibes a little bit, but right when you walk in, they have like 5 or 6 giant booths. Of course, they put those at the front because you get sucked in, but I have to admit, this is really, really cool, and it drew my eye, so whatever they're doing, it worked. So, as you can see, I'm a happy camper. There's so much going on. This is Tenable's booth. They've got like a Family Feud security game going on back there. They were guessing like the most popular cybersecurity certs just a second ago. But the whole day, this has just looked like a giant mountain, and then they just changed the screen, and now they're doing a game show. So, it's like Disney World. I feel like I'm in Lilo and Stitch right now. I'm a very happy camper. If you've watched any of our courses with Mr. Anthony Sequeira, chances are you've heard him mention Splunk once or 10,000 times. We stopped by their booth, picked up some swag. I think we got maybe a couple of things for him. Anthony, they missed you. So this is what Bitdefender has chosen to do with their booth space. They have a giant car, and surprisingly, this is not the only race car in a booth in this building. There's like 3 of them, but this is Ferrari, I think. And they've got a little setup over there where you can actually pretend like you're racing. I tried it earlier, and I got out on the second lap. I just got up and left because I was crashing the car and it was a disaster, but I did have a lot of fun. We came all the way to Las Vegas, and we ended up in a galaxy far, far away. I'm here with 2 very familiar faces. How are you all enjoying Black Hat so far?
Well, I have to speak for both of us. I have a completely unbroken winning track record. I've won 10 battles to 0, but we have confidence in Lord Vader that one of these days he will prevail. What do you say, Vader?
I do have to upgrade the security on my Death Star, but after that, everything should be fine.
May the Force be with you.
So if you guys watch the show regularly, you know that there's certain companies that come up a lot, and this company in particular has given us so much content. We just want to thank them, and they're here at Black Hat with us right now. So I'm currently sitting at 19. I have never played blackjack in my life, and I'm really hoping Caleb's not steering me wrong here. The people next to me said they would help me out. I don't know that I trust him. So let's hope he doesn't screw me over. Oh, we're done. Oh, we're done. Okay. I lost. I don't even know how that happened. So you guys always make fun of me because I'm so young and I never get any of your references. So I couldn't think of a better way to cap off day 1 of Black Hat than by jumping into a ball pit. We're gonna see if we can't find a ball that says check marks on it and maybe win some stuff. So I'm gonna hand this off. Let's go. Okay. I found it. Look at that. You're not going to make fun of me for being a kid anymore, are you? Here with my good friend Wizard Spider for day 2 of Black Hat USA 2023. Yesterday was packed full of stuff. My feet hurt like heck, and I was very tired at the end of the day yesterday, but yeah, thank you for that. But I'm rejuvenized, ready to go. I'm curious to know how Wizard Spider feels about how today's going to go. Wizard Spider, what you think? We flew all the way out to Las Vegas, Nevada to Black Hat USA 2023 to see John Hammond. We came to his booth, and he's not here. So I, for one, am sorely disappointed, but I'm here with Kyle to get the inside scoop on what it's really like to work with John. John, could you answer that question for us?
So it turns out John is actually the next generation of generative AI, and most people had no idea as an influencer that's what it was. So ChatGPT, that obviously is what feeds his text, and then obviously plenty of the different deep fake capability, and that's what you get John, and that's why you don't get him here at the booth today.
See, I knew it. I feel like we did a webinar with him at one point. There was a glitch,
Did you hear his voice? I mean, it's just too perfect. It's a little too studly. Voice actor-ish quality, and you can't be a voice actor and a security nerd, so.
I think I saw a 6th finger on his left hand at one point. That's how you know he's AI generated.
100%.
I'm curious how you got to the conference today. Did you take your bike or did you fly in?
Well, it was a tough decision because, Vegas, 8 hours before throttle. I always take the F-14, but they don't do parts anymore.
That's true. Well, I'm glad you were able to make it. Maverick, before I sign off here, anything you want to say to the folks watching?
Absolutely. Because we will be your wingman anytime.
Black Hat is dead, and we are in mourning. We're counting down the last 10 minutes of day 2, after which point we'll go back to our hotel and cry that it's all over. But we will rejoice that we got to experience it. My first Black Hat was super fun, and I hope that it's the first of many. Please send me back next year, because I really love this, and I didn't get to see everything yet because there's too much to see. Overall, great trip. 10 out of 10 would recommend. I'm here outside of ACI Learning's booth with Mark. Mark is a longtime viewer of ACI Learning and IT Pro's content, and he's also a fan of Technado. So I wanted to grab him for a quick interview. Mark, how are you enjoying Black Hat so far this year?
I am having a really good time. Yep, meeting people like you.
I'm glad to hear it. This isn't your first year, right? You've been here a couple times?
Yeah, I've been here 4 years.
4 years, and you're staying for DEF CON?
Oh yeah, that's the reason I'm here.
Okay, so this is just like the appetizer.
Yeah, this is the appetizer to see what the other side is doing.
Okay. We're not staying for DEF CON, hopefully next year, but I'm looking forward to hearing about how it goes because it sounds like it's a really big deal. So far, in your time here at Black Hat, do you have like a favorite booth that you've seen?
I have to give a shout out to Trellix since they helped me get here.
Okay.
Let's see. I like Nova4 just because, especially with everything that happened with Kevin, it's kind of like, yeah, he got a lot of us into this. So, yeah, I'm glad to see them here.
Yeah.
And you guys, obviously.
Well, yeah, we got the Mario Kart, so it's hard to beat that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and no pressure, you don't have to say my name, I totally get it. Do you have, that's a good one. Do you have a favorite edutainer from IT Pro?
I like the show that you guys do with you and Daniel and Don. They make really good oil and water, and you're kind of the mixture in between.
I do my best. I try to understand the references. Sometimes I don't get them all. Well, we're really glad that you've been a longtime viewer and that you enjoy the show. It's great to hear feedback from people that actually watch the content, and enjoy it week after week. So hopefully we'll be able to put this in an episode and you'll make an appearance on Technado right alongside us. Maybe we can get you in there in person sometime. What do you think?
Hey, I would do it. Hey, look at what the old guy does.
Well, I've got your card, so I will keep your name on file and we'll reach out to you. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Nice to meet you. Well, that was fun. Hope you enjoyed. I had a great time, and I learned a lot. So I'm very glad I had the opportunity to go, and I hope I get to go back next year. Maybe I'll see some of y'all there. But like I said, we've got some great security articles that we're going to get into, so we'll go ahead and jump into those. This comes to us from Bleeping Computer, and I promise we'll toss to Don and Daniel in a second because they're going to have a lot to say about this. WinRAR flaw lets hackers run programs when you open RAR archives. I'm saying that right, aren't I?
Yeah.
WinRAR.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what is it that this it gives us gives attackers like remote execution abilities?
Sort of, yeah. I don't know that it counts necessarily as remote execution, but so what they can do is they can basically craft an archive, an RAR archive, or a zip or whatever, as long as you're using the WinRAR archiver, and that when you open the archive, they can trick it into automatically executing code. So I say I don't know that it counts as remote code execution because they're not actually connected.
Code execution or command execution, whatever the heck that is they're doing. That would just be some sort of execution. Right, because they're not remotely telling it to do anything. It's just kind of more like malware at this point, where it's kind of built in, and once you run the thing, it does it, and off to the races we go.
Yeah, and normally if you were to like get an attachment or whatever and you open it, you see an archive. An archive is like, well, it's a container. And you open the container and you look at it, and if you see a VBS file or an EXE, an MSI, something like that, you're like, oh, not running that, right? And you don't do it. But in this case, you open the archive and just blam, it delivers the payload, right? It uses I think it was a buffer overflow, right, to write beyond the memory that's allocated for WinRAR, and then it's able to execute code that shouldn't be able to execute. Now that could immediately then chain other exploits to create remote execution, but that's the thing. The reason I wanted to highlight it here on the show is the researchers who discovered this did responsible disclosure. They told WinRAR. WinRAR made an update and pushed it out, so you just have to update to 6.23, and you got your patch and you're in business. Now, I think I've said it here on the podcast before. I might be the only person on the planet who's actually registered WinRAR. So I do own a license of WinRAR. And so when I saw this, I immediately checked mine to see what version it was. And I was running 6.21. So I was actually 2 versions behind.
Ruh-roh.
6.22 has who knows what. And 23 is what fixed this. I've gotten spoiled. And if I've gotten spoiled, I have to assume other people have as well, by software that automatically checks for updates. Right? Our operating systems do it, regardless of which operating system. If you run Mac OS, Windows, or Linux, they all do automatic updates these days. And so we don't really worry about updating our operating systems anymore. And then other applications like Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, your Office suite, they do automatic updates. And so we don't worry about it there. But in the case of WinRAR, not only do they not do automatic updates, they don't have an update system at all. So if you're running an outdated version of WinRAR, you don't know.
So it's just your responsibility to go out there, check to see what's the latest version of WinRAR, and make sure that you have it.
That's right. And if you want to update, you have to actually download the installer and reinstall as if it was the first time you installed it, and off you go.
And Don, tell me if your experience is anything similar to mine. That's typically the hardest part of doing like proper security updating, patching, is those third-party apps that we use for X, Y, and Z reasons in our businesses that may or may not have, at the very least, even if it does do some sort of like interactive updating where you can say, hey, check for updates and set a schedule. I've got 1,000 PCs in my network. How do I centrally manage those things and make sure that those are getting done? And if they're not getting done, do I get any kind of reporting? Is it going to tell how you start to see the nightmare scenario? And that's just with one product.
Yeah.
Maybe I've got 10 products. That's what makes patching. Sorry, as a hacker, who's someone who's looking for ways to get in, I typically am not going for a Windows vulnerability. I'm typically not going for because those things, like Don said, they get updated fairly regularly. When those things get found, I don't have 0 days sitting in my pocket for Windows and Linux and Mac OS. I very well may be able to go out and find some easily found proof of concept code for that. All I need to do is modify a bit to gain access through some third-party app that you're using to, compress image files. Oh, you didn't see that, but that's part of your web app. And now I made my way through that, and you're not updating it because it's working. And therefore, if it ain't broke, don't touch it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get updated. And now I'm in. And that's how I make my way in. And now I have access to your operating system. Thanks. Through those third parties. And that's why this is such a big deal.
Yeah. And for me, I'd like to think that I should know better because I live in this world. But it's funny. I got to thinking about it. I was like, why do I even use WinRAR? Yeah. Right. And the story is a million years ago, I worked for a bank. And at this bank, we had a site license for WinRAR. It was the archiver that we used on all of our machines. And I don't know why it was chosen. They had chosen that before I was hired over there. And so at home, I purchased a license for WinRAR back then because I wanted to make sure that the archives I created at home were compatible with the archives we were using at work, because the way it would create zips, not even RARs, but the way it would create zips was a little bit different than like Windows and other things. So little compatibility issues would pop up. And then over the years, it just became my standard. Whenever I get a new computer, I bought it, so I'll just install WinRAR and use it. But I was thinking about it today. I haven't touched an RAR archive in forever.
Like a hot minute.
I mean, well over a decade. I don't know if anybody even really uses that anymore. In fact, I'm more common to see like 7 zips, which I don't think WinRAR even supports. So at this point, I'd actually be better off removing WinRAR.
Doesn't 7-zip support RAR?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
I think it does.
Yeah. I don't know if it has an auto update or not, but it might.
But it might.
So, should I switch to 7-zip, something that maybe is a little more modern? Or should I just use what's built into the operating system? Because Windows, Mac, and Linux all have where they can handle zip files.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about updates.
That would be what I would think you would do. Like, just if the operating system supports it and your operating system is doing things like auto updating, just go with it's one less, right? It's all about reducing attack surface, right? The more things you add to your attack surface, the more likely it is someone's going to find something wrong and be able to use that to gain entry into that system. Therefore, the smaller the attack surface, the more difficult that becomes. So that would probably be the best way to go, Don.
Yeah. So for me, I had a use case like 17 years ago.
He's hanging on to it for dear life.
And I just never reevaluated it. But you know, an incident like this makes you look at it and say, oh, maybe I should have reevaluated it.
Now, here's one of my favorite things about this article as I was reading through. It says, as a target needs to trick a victim into opening an archive, the vulnerability's severity rating drops down to 7.8 as per the CVSS. And I'm thinking to myself, that seems backwards. Because if all you had to do was trick a user into opening an archive, that's not the most. Actually, I would say it should go up because it's almost guaranteed someone's going to open that thing. I'm just being facetious.
Well, I mean, they make it sound like that's hard.
Yeah.
And
that increases the complexity or whatever to getting it to execute when That's fairly straightforward. You could send an archive that says, "Do not open this, danger, it's malware," and someone's going to go, "I got to see." Click. Oh yeah, they were right. Malware everywhere.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Yeah, I think it's probably trivial to trick people into opening.
Yeah.
And especially when they just have to open the attachment. Most people feel like that's a safe action.
Right.
It's like the old USB key, right? You leave a USB key in the parking lot. As long as you put at least one picture, like you have something labeled as a JPEG, people are going to open it.
They got to see.
Ooh, what's this picture?
Yeah.
But it sounds like based on this conversation, there's not many people that are still utilizing this. It's not like something that's a whole lot of people would have to worry about. So, but for the tens of people that might,
and,
for Don and the 10 others,
and
right?
His support group.
It sounds like they just it's a matter of like just keeping it updated, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did. I updated to 6.23, but then it got the gears going in my head of there's going to be another exploit. They've had a few over the years, and is it worth it for me to even continue using it when most of the time I'm just like right clicking on an archive because I don't even see the program, right? I right click on an archive, choose extract, and it's doing it through WinRAR, but I don't see it, and I'm not really realizing a benefit, so I'm taking an unnecessary risk.
Okay. Well, for the tens of you that are in the same boat as Don, just keep that in mind. Keep your stuff updated, and maybe it's time to move on.
Jerry, Sally, you know who you are.
I'm trying to see.
You don't need to call them out by name.
Yeah,
I'm trying to see if 7-Zip has an automatic update. I was hoping to be able to install like an older version of it. As of the filming of this episode, 23.01 is the current version of 7-Zip. I'm going to install an older version and just see what happens. I'm going to get in trouble with the IT department.
Yeah.
Wait, aren't
you the head of the IT department?
Well, yes.
He's gonna put himself in timeout. Yeah.
Throw it in a virtual machine. They'll never know. That's what that's what I heard other people do.
So we don't outright block software on company machines. This is the day job for the podcast listeners. We don't outright block software, but we do log software. So whenever there's unauthorized software, Greg, our VP of corporate IT, he gets that notification, he gets that list, and then he reaches out and acts upon it. So it's like you get a little bit of leeway, but it's a known thing. So if this is not authorized software, then I'm going to get a call from Greg.
I love when you refer to that as our day job because it is, but for whatever reason, it puts in my head that like we're doing this at night, like we're Twitch streamers and we're just doing this overnight to like make ends meet. This is what pays the bills for us.
That's right.
Anyway, so
$12 last month.
Yeah, $12 whole, and that was without the ad revenue.
That's right.
That adds a good 60 cents on there.
Easily.
So going from talking about something that's maybe a little bit older, we've got an article about something that's brand new. This comes to us from the Hacker News. Google introduces first quantum resilient FIDO2 security key implementation, and that sounds very futuristic. So what this is, it's a FIDO key it's resilient to quantum attacks, I guess, or quantum resistant encryption algorithms or something like that.
So let's not read into it too much because the technology is just the same stuff that we've got forever. But, back in, I believe it was back in December or January, we reported on new quantum-resistant encryption algorithms that were being selected by NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. NIST was evaluating a whole field of encryption algorithms, and they selected a group of 4 algorithms that are going to be the future that everyone needs to adopt and so on. And back then, at that time, I made the comment that, hey, when a new encryption algorithm comes out, you probably don't want to be on it day one because problems come up, right? When it gets out of there in the field, when the rubber hits the road, when the plan meets the enemy, things change, right? And so that's kind of what we've been seeing this year as 2023 has rolled on. There have been some exploits and vulnerabilities found in the encryption algorithms, especially some of the low power ones. That we've reported on those earlier. However, this, as far as I'm aware, is the first high-profile implementation of one of those algorithms. And the one they're using is called dilithium, which I believe is a Star Trek reference to dilithium crystals. But it is the first of, from what I've seen, of those 4 to be used in a high-profile product. So it's a FIDO2 key, works exactly like every FIDO2 key that's out there, like if you use a YubiKey or Google's Titan key.
I think it's Titan key. Yeah.
Whatever key it is, if you use one of those, it works the same way. except the algorithm it's using to secure your private key on that device is dilithium. And so now we're starting to see some of the big corporate entities actually rolling this out. And that means it won't be long, definitely in 2024, that we're going to start seeing things like Cisco ASA firewalls and Palo Alto and other VPN devices are going to start adopting these algorithms to use. And they're quantum resistant in that they're very, very strong encryption algorithms, but resistant, like something being water resistant is different than being waterproof,
Yeah,
right?
what's fire resistant mean to you?
Yeah.
Like if I put on a fire resistant suit, would you walk into the burning building, or
Which,
would you be still less apt to do so?
not technology related, but why does flammable and inflammable mean the same thing?
That's a good question.
I don't understand the English language
It's
sometimes.
like when you say something's valuable versus invaluable, or
yeah, the-
priceless means that it has a high value kind of a thing.
yeah. You know,
Yeah.
our language is challenged.
It's just, I feel bad for those that are learning it. God bless you.
So let's put a practical spin on this. So if you listen to the podcast way back in January when we talked about these algorithms, you said, screw that. I'm not going to mess with that until they make me. That time is coming soon. Over the next few months, we'll see more vendors picking that up. And definitely in 2024, we're going to see these algorithms get mainstream acceptance. Technically, they've already got mainstream acceptance. NIST picked them. But we're going to see more and more of that. So that's what's really important on this one.
Well, and quantum computing is still relegated to basically nation states at this point, right? Like you don't have like everyday access to a quantum computer.
Have you seen what they look like?
Yes, they're crazy looking.
And
they're
they hang from the ceiling,
Yeah.
and you have to have like liquid
lots
nitrogen.
of gold looking.
Oh,
like it's
it's
very
insane,
cool.
Insane, yeah.
Yeah.
The terrorists don't have it yet.
No, they
Um,
don't.
But you know, some of the nation
No,
states
Mr.
do.
Robot has no access to this thing. Oh, I
Wow.
see. Sophia's got her eyes on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a metal chandelier or
That's-
something out of
yeah.
a dark crystal,
Yeah,
right?
it's very steampunk.
You need like a Skeksis
Yeah.
needs to come out and tell you how it works.
Yeah.
See, the thing that came to my mind is it's like if Lumiere was a cyborg, the guy from Beauty and the Beast. That's what that looks like to me.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
That's what that
to
looks
what's
like.
Going on here.
Kudos on doing a movie reference,
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
that
I tried,
we've
man.
all seen.
Doing my best. So I know I'm fixating on the wrong thing here, but when you said dilithium and you were like, oh, it's a Star Trek reference, so I looked it up. It is actually a real thing. It's not the thing that Star
It's a
Trek
real
says
thing?
it is, but dilithium is
Dilithium crystals.
it's a diatomic molecule comprising 2 lithium atoms covalently bonded, which that means nothing. But you know, it's not what it
Oh, that
is in
makes
Star
sense.
Trek,
Yeah.
but it is
Yeah.
a real thing technically. It's just in Star Trek, it's like a crystal or something.
Totally makes sense, but I thought they made it up for the show.
Well, now you know.
Dilithium
Fun
crystals
fact.
they
Today I
probably
learned.
did, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
actually a crystal that's used to power ships or whatever it was in Star Trek,
Yeah.
but it is a real thing, and it does. The Wikipedia article says this is about the real substance. If you're looking for Star Trek, go here, so they know.
Okay.
But yeah, fun fact. Now you know. I know that's the wrong thing to fixate on, but you said that and
Is
had
it
to go
on
find
the
out.
periodic table of elements?
No, so in the show,
Lithium is, right?
Lithium is.
lithium is, but because dilithium is it's like dihydrogen. You know, it's just
Yeah,
a
like
Okay.
dioxide,
bonding.
right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha.
But I guess in Star Trek, it is shown on a periodic table as number 87, which is actually francium or something.
Okay.
So it's depicted as being on the periodic table, but
But
it's not.
not.
So now you know.
Interesting.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw us off.
And
No,
knowing
just
is
a
half
good
the battle.
side right there.
Now
That's
you
right.
know.
The other half is lasers.
I can't make my own references, so I just have to do deep dives on you guys' references and
Man,
teach myself.
By the
There we
way,
go.
I started watching G.I. Joe again recently. That is a damn good show. Like there's like drama and suspense
Yeah,
and
yeah.
action. And it's like it's a really good show. I'm like, how have we devolved into what cartoons are now? Because they suck.
It's true.
Like, I've got little kids and I watch Paw Patrol and it is hot garbage. Right? Like my son is all about Chase being on the case, but I'm like, bro, let me show you something. And,
It's not all bad. Have you watched Bluey?
yeah, so I like
Bluey's
Bluey.
pretty entertaining.
Yeah, Bluey's pretty good. What's that other one with the like Mickey Mouse and their?
it's like it's a 2D cartoon, right?
Yeah,
But it's Mickey.
super good.
Yeah, that's
I
that's
don't-
pretty
super
funny.
good.
We-
It's hysterical.
In the Pizzette household, we call that gross Mickey.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah, we don't
Yeah, you know
watch
the one
that
I'm talking about.
Yeah, we don't watch
that
that.
junk is funny as crap, bro.
I like that he said gross Mickey, and
It's
you were
like-
like, yeah,
dude,
that's it.
It's like Ren and
Watch-
Stimpy.
Watch, yeah, it looks very much like Ren and
Yeah.
Stimpy. Watch the one where Daisy and Donald they get sick of having to do everything with Minnie and Mickey, and they fake being ill so that they don't have to go out with them, and then they show up to basically nurse them back to health. It's hysterical.
This is the hard-hitting
Hysterical.
discourse we need
Yes.
on Technado.
That junk had me in stitches.
This is what the people come here for.
Yeah.
So we'll I promise we'll go back to some security related stuff.
No, we won't.
Eventually
That's all
we'll get there.
lies.
Eventually, we'll go from gross Mickey to gross security or something. So this next article is part of a segment that's one of my favorites here, and I'm going to do my best. This segment is called "Dope."
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do,
Pretty
so,
good.
You see me look to the side. That's me looking to Daniel. Like, was that good?
Pretty good.
So this article, it comes from Wired, but I'm viewing it on Web Archive because it wouldn't let me view any more articles. So this is so this article says an Apple malware flagging tool is trivially, puts that in quotes, easy to bypass. So it's a background task manager tool, is supposed to spot malicious software, but it has some troubling flaws apparently.
Yeah, it's a neat idea. It's a neat tool. So when software runs, typically it loads into memory and it does its stuff in RAM, right? And occasionally it writes to disk. And there's certain areas you expect to write to disk, like your documents folder inside your profile or whatever. This background process runs on Mac OS, and what it does is it looks for when a program is running from memory and starts writing to areas of disk that it really shouldn't, right? Or even just attempting to write to an area. So permissions probably block it. Your system's probably safe. Mac OS is pretty secure as far as OSs go. And so it watches for that. And if it sees inappropriate access, it notifies you. You get a little pop-up on your screen telling you that the software is potentially doing something malicious. As a user, you can choose to override it and allow it or block it, right? So it puts you in control of what the software is doing. So that's good, right? That's what we want to see happen. Well, security researcher Patrick Wardle, who if you follow Mac security, you've heard his name. He's actually one of the leading Mac OS security researchers, independent from Apple. So he's his own person. He took a look at it, and he had created a tool called, I think it's called Block or Blocky Block. What is it? I forget what his tool is
Blocky
called.
World.
Block. I was right the first time. So he has a tool called Block that does the exact same thing, right? But it's third-party software. He wrote it. He released it through his company. And like Daniel was just saying earlier, if you could have it built into the OS, wouldn't that be better? Now you don't have to worry about updating it and all of that. It's managed by the vendor versus installing third-party software. But Patrick Wardle, he knew that he had a hard time with the software that he wrote, and there were a lot of challenges to doing what it was doing. So he was curious to look at Apple's implementation and see if they had overcome the challenges he faced a different way. And what he found was that they had not addressed a number. He found like 3 vulnerabilities in it right away, ways that he was able to trick the system, one of which required admin privileges already, so that one you kind of throw out, but the other 2 did not. There were ways that he couldn't stop the tool from running. The tool would run and do its thing, but he could block the notification to the user. So even though the software was trying to do something malicious, the user would never see it. He submitted one to Apple, and Apple did fix it, but wasn't really moving very quickly. And so at the Black Hat conference, he went ahead and disclosed these other 2, even though there isn't a patch available for them yet.
So what was interesting about this to me was, because he was making the similar type of software, he knew of all the underlying issues that went along with creating this, and he was having trouble defeating them himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, that piqued his curiosity to go, Apple, how did you guys do? Let me check and see and then he would submit to them, hey, here's an issue with that, and they would go, cool, squash it. But you see, I could do it again. That's the way I did it this time. You need to fix the issue that causes, and they're like, no. Here's how it works, player. I tell my user base security, and they go, sweet. And then when you give me an issue, I fixed it. I fixed the issue. Well, you didn't fix the thing that makes the issue, though. That doesn't matter. I fixed that issue. So I am doing security. You see how this works?
Yeah, and he brought up that point. And I said he released or disclosed this at Black Hat. He actually did it at DEF CON. I had the wrong conference.
Oh, DEF CON. They're
right
basically
after.
married, yeah.
Yeah. So what he was saying was, and I don't necessarily agree with this, so he said that by vendors like Apple half-heartedly releasing security features like these, it gives people a false sense of security. You think that you're more secure than you are because you've got this half-baked security tool doing something. Now, I disagree with this because I feel like 99.9% of Mac users probably have no idea this tool exists. and so how can you be giving them a false sense of security when they don't even know the tool's there?
Yeah.
And and any security is better than no security.
That's
so
true.
I think Patrick and hey, I'm not a security researcher. I didn't present at DEF CON, so who am I? I'm just some jerk on the internet. But I think he needed something to present at DEF CON.
That does seem reasonable. And this is still a good topic because it does raise the awareness of the tool, that it is there and that it does have some security issues. And hopefully Apple, and they do seem to be at least working on it in some way, shape, or form, right? So that very well may be the case, that he just needed something to talk about. And he got this. It's funny, that Windows machines, they have the AMSI system, right? And that's pretty trivial to bypass. And maybe it's kind of like that, where done is better than perfect. And like you say, something's better than nothing. And hopefully they continue to work on it and make it better. This is kind of the first iteration of this as it is out in the wild. And if it does get bypassed, I think the article said it's basically rolling back the clock a year on what your security standpoint is.
Yeah.
It's not a huge deal.
Now, one thing they don't mention in the article, but I think is important, people need to remember, is that Apple has diverted a lot of their developer resources away from Mac OS and over to their other operating systems, their iOS, iPadOS, tvOS, the other ecosystems they maintain. There is very little software development happening inside of Mac OS right now. In fact, the bulk of the engineers at Apple that work on Mac OS are really just making sure it's up to date to handle new hardware to support the hardware releases.
So is there going to be no more MacBooks and iMacs? And
so Apple, Tim Cook is famous for not committing on this. People keep asking, like, are you going to do iPad OS? Like, is iOS going to become
the OS?
The OS? And he keeps saying, no. But with every version, you get more and more iOS in macOS. macOS starts to look more and more like iOS with every single version. It doesn't make sense to maintain two OSs that look identical.
Yeah.
Why not just have one? So I feel like we're going to get to that point. It makes sense. They've got their own silicon now.
Yep.
And they use the same chips in the iPad as they do in the MacBooks. Like, there's no difference. It doesn't make sense to have two different OSs on the same architecture from the same company.
So tell me to buy Apple stock without telling me to buy Apple stock.
I think that ship sailed. I think you had to have bought Apple stock like 20 years ago.
Yeah, but what if you buy it now and all of a sudden, you know what I mean? Like, they have like a big breakthrough, and that's what they're kind of hiding with this.
Aren't they the most valuable company in the world?
I have no idea. I don't buy stocks.
I'm pretty sure they are. So,
are they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And this isn't a stock podcast, so please do not act on anything.
We were just having fun.
I don't know crap, but
I don't know.
I just have to think that if you're the most valuable, maybe it's the most valuable private sector company, but like,
I have no idea.
No, you're right. As of the end of
Are they
June,
really?
$3 trillion market value, making it the most valuable company ever.
Wow.
Yeah, more than most countries'
Holy
GDP.
crap, $3 trillion.
$3 trillion.
So when you're that
Woof.
big, even if they came up with a cure for cancer tomorrow, like I don't know how much bigger you can get.
How much is a stock to purchase?
question.
How much is one share?
Yeah, what's one share running?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
Right now, one share, 176.
Yeah.
Well, that's not- still within the,
$176.52.
I was going to say, that's not.
If I had like a bonus, if somebody
Yeah.
paid me like, I don't know, like a bonus, I could use that to buy some Apple stock.
So in this impossible scenario you're describing,
right, and it's completely hypothetical.
yeah, stocks are like Bitcoins. You can buy fractions of them.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
That is true.
See?
But
So you don't need a bonus. There
I
goes
could-
your argument.
I could just keep using my plasma blood money.
Just buy them one at a time, one like percentage at a time.
That's it.
By the end of the year, you'll have a full stock or a full share. So this is also, I mean, it's semi-related, but kind of not. So have you guys ever played the game Wordle?
yes.
Familiar with that? Okay. So the guy you guys were talking about, Patrick Wardle, and if he's a well-known Mac security researcher, right? You probably have heard his name, right? So he's the cousin of the guy that invented Wordle. And
Interesting.
They just had the same last name, Wardle. I was like, that's not a common last name. So I looked it up, and they are cousins. And they've got another cousin that's like a filmmaker or something. So very smart family, very genius family. Anyway, just thought it was a fun fact. If you play Wordle, there you go. It's created by Patrick Wardle's cousin.
Today we learned this episode has been packed full of more random facts
Yes,
than
it
any
has.
other episode ever.
We should just call this the random facts episode.
Daniel's not getting a bonus, and I'm definitely not getting a bonus. Well, I think that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. I did want to remind y'all that Technado is sponsored by ACI Learning, the people behind IT Pro. So you can use that promo code Technado30 for a discount on your IT Pro membership. And if you're listening from the Technado website, just look for that sponsored by button, and that will take you right to the IT Pro website. You can also check out ACI Learning's webinars and live on social events. We had one last week on software-defined networking. So if you missed that, that's available on ACI Learning socials. That's with Wes and Anthony. It was a pretty good webinar. I watched it. I quite enjoyed it. We've got some good ones coming up in September as well. I think we've got an all things cybersecurity coming up with Daniel. So keep an eye out for those as well. And I think that's pretty much it for me. Anything that I'm forgetting?
Jeez.
Oh, I wish I understood.
Old school is a classic. We do have Wild West Hackin' Fest coming up.
That is true.
Right? Which is in October.
Quickly approaching.
Yes, that is, I think, the third week of October, I'm pretty sure.
The week of the 20th, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And while I won't be there personally, you guys will be.
We will be there.
And so we will have a film crew out there at Wild West Hackin' Fest. If you're going to be there, be sure to look for the team. And we're going to try and film an episode of Technado from Wild West Hackin' Fest.
Are we? That'll be fun.
Are you coming in via satellite?
We're still debating whether I'm going to come in remote or whether we'll try and find somebody on location.
Right, because, John Hammond will be there. Tim Medine will be there. John Strand will be there. There is
it's a real who's who.
Yes, it is. It is indeed.
Yep, and Daniel Lowry's going to be there, so that tells you what kind of an event this is.
I have been there since the first
Since
one.
the Dark Ages?
Yes.
Or maybe you, Technado listener, if you want to be on the podcast, that may be your chance. If you're just passing through Deadwood, South Dakota, as many people do, be sure to swing by and check it out.
Well, all right. Thank you for reminding me, because you're right. That's coming up pretty
around the
fast.
corner.
It's going to be
cheese at us.
It'll
All these people just yelling cheese.
It'll be here before you know it. So now you know we'll be there. You have plenty of time to prepare. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Technado. I hope you had as much fun learning as I did. We'll see you next time.